In this video, we'll learn how MARI records actions and events inside our project into history. Okay, so I've reopened that initial project that we created early on in this course. So this is basically just the full geometry of our assassin. Now, inside of MARI, every action you perform, every paint stroke that you paint, everything you do is recorded into history. Now, history is not a new concept. It transitions from 2D applications to 3D applications. And when working in MARI, really it's no different. Basically, what history allows you to do is come in here, and let's just say we were looking at maybe some of these areas here, and we wanted to paint. So let's say we came in here and we painted a little bit of paint on her head. And we applied that paint. Now, what history allows us to do is come back and undo that action or that event of painting that red color on our character's head. Now, before I do that and show you how to do that, I want to show you a palette that visualizes history in your projects. It's called, fittingly, the History palette. And again, you can right-click on your toolbars up here and just come down until you see History View right here. And I actually have it open already. It's right over here. And you can see every action that I've performed since opening this project, all the way back to essentially the very beginning here where there were no actions. So you'll notice here that not only did my paint get recorded here, but a projection got recorded, as well as a lot of different navigational operations, such as panning, zooming, orbiting, things of that nature. Now, when we're wanting to move back and forth in history, this is actually a pretty simple process, and there's a few ways we can do it. Up here, you can see we have our undo button right here, and then we have a redo button right next to it. So we could come in and we could undo back a few steps, and you can see how we're starting to step back through history. We can also redo and step forward through that same history. You can also find these two commands right here under the Edit menu. We can undo and we can redo. Now, typically when I'm working in MARI, I don't use either of these two sets of commands or buttons. I don't go to the toolbar, and I certainly don't go to the Edit menu because there are keyboard shortcuts assigned to both these. Undo is pretty simple. It's one you probably might guess. It's Control-Z. So I can Control-Z and step back in history until that paint is gone and no longer exists. Now, to step forward or to redo, all we need to do is Control-Y. So that's going to allow that paint to reappear on the head of our character here. Pretty straightforward, right? Now, I do want to illustrate something that you should be careful of when you're working with history here. So what you may notice here, if we were to come back in and let's say we double-clicked all the way back to here. We can just double click and jump back in history. So that's well before this paint event ever occurred. So now that we have stepped back or undid in history, all of these actions and events that occur after this zoom will be lost if we do anything else. So watch what happens. I'll just orbit. As soon as I orbit and release, all of that history, including those paint strokes that came after that zoom, have now been replaced by this orbit. So history is something that you should be careful with using, especially if you're going back too far in history. Just know that every event and action that you take after opening your project gets recorded here inside of MARI's history view. So you can oftentimes go back in history quite some distance and undo quite a bit of information and actions that you've actually performed. So be careful in using this. It's a powerful tool, but it is one that you will use on a daily basis. All right, great. So in this video, we've learned how history works inside of MARI.